He who loves many knows woman. He who loves one knows love. In all cases, forgetting is based on the motive or reluctance. In love blindness, a person turns into a criminal without remorse. Never dreams happy, but only unsatisfied. A person never refuses anything. He just replaces one pleasure with another. The secret of the human soul lies in the psychic dreamers of childhood. Get to the bottom of these dreamers, and healing will come. Those who lack sex talk about sex. Hungry people talk about food. People who have no money talk about money. And our oligarchs and bankers talk about morality. We don't choose each other by chance. We only meet those who already exist in our subconscious. How bold and self-confident becomes the one who gains the conviction that he is loved. The more strange a dream seems to us, the deeper meaning it carries. The limitation of pleasure only increases its value. At the heart of all our action are two motives: the desire to become great and sexual attraction. Being completely honest with yourself is a good exercise. Recognizing the problem is half the success in solving it. My world is a small island of pain floating in an ocean of indifference. Only the realization of childhood dreams can bring happiness. We enter the world alone and leave it alone. The only person you should compare yourself to is in the past, and the only person you should be better than is you now. Why don't you fall in love with someone new every month? Because when parting, you don't have to lose a particle of our own heart. In our dreams, we always have one foot in childhood. A woman should soften, not to weaken a man. Love is the most proven way to overcome feelings of shame. For each of us, the world disappears with heal and death. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious.
If you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. Memories warm you up from the inside, but they also tear you apart. I think you still love me, but we can't escape the fact that I'm not enough for you. I knew this was going to happen. So I'm not blaming you for falling in love with another woman. I'm not angry either. I should be, but I'm not. I just feel pain, a lot of pain. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. Why do people have to be this lonely? What's the point of it all? Millions of people in this world, all of them, yearning, looking to others to satisfy them, yet isolating themselves. Why was the earth put here just to nourish human loneliness? Nobody likes being alone that much. I don't go out of my way to make friends. That's all. It just leads to disappointment. Sometimes fate is like a small sandstorm that keeps changing directions. You change direction, but the sandstorm chases you. You turn again, but the storm adjusts. Over and over you play this out, like some ominous dance with death just before dawn. Why? Because this storm isn't something that blew in from far away, something that has nothing to do with you. This storm is you. Something inside of you. So all you can do is give into it, step right inside the storm, closing your eyes and plugging up your ears so the sand doesn't get in, and walk through it step by step. There's no sun there, no moon, no direction, no sense of time, just fine white sand swirling up into the sky like pulverized bones. And you really will have to make it through that violent, metaphysical, symbolic storm. No matter how metaphysical or symbolic it might be, make no mistake about it. It will cut through, flash like 1,000 razor blades. People will bleed there, and you will bleed too. Hot red blood. You'll catch that blood in your hands, your own blood and the blood of others. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what this storm's all about. No matter how much suffering you went through, you never wanted to let go of those memories. Sometimes when I look at you, I feel I'm gazing at a distant star. It's dazzling, but the light is from tens of thousands of years ago. Maybe the star doesn't even exist anymore. Yet sometimes that light seems more real to me than anything. But who can say what's best? That's why you need to grab whatever chance you have of happiness where you find it, and not worry about other people too much. My experience tells me that we get no more than 2 or 3 such chances in a lifetime, and if we let them go, we regret it for the rest of our lives. Anyone who falls in love is searching for the missing pieces of themselves, so anyone who's in love gets sad when they think of their lover. It's like stepping back inside a room you have fond memories of, one you haven't seen in a long time. Lost opportunities, lost possibilities, feelings we can never get back. That's part of what it means to be alive, but inside our heads, at least that's where I imagine it. There's a little room where we store those memories. A room like the stacks in this library, and to understand the workings of our own heart we have to keep on making new reference cards. We have to dust things off every once in a while, let in fresh air, change the water in the flower vases. In other words, you'll live forever in your own private library. I want you always to remember me. Will you remember that I existed and that I stood next to you here like this? I was always hungry for love. Just once I wanted to know what it was like to get my fill of it, to be fed so much love I couldn't take any more. Just once. But I didn't understand then that I could hurt somebody so badly she would never recover, that a person can, just by living, damage another human being beyond repair. Unfortunately, the clock is ticking. The hours are going by. The past increases, the future recedes, possibilities decreasing, regrets mounting. I have this strange feeling that I'm not myself anymore. It's hard to put into words, but I guess it's like I was fast asleep, and someone came, disassembled me, and hurriedly put me back together again. That sort of feeling. If you can love someone with your whole heart, even one person, then there's salvation in life. Even if you can't get together with that person, is it possible in the final analysis for one human being to achieve perfect understanding of another? We can invest enormous time and energy and serious efforts to know another person. But in the end, how close can we come to that person's essence? We convince ourselves that we know the other person well, but do we really know anything important about anyone? Thank you. That man is best educated who knows the greatest number of things that are so, and who can do the greatest number of things to help and heal the world. Education is preeminently a matter of quality, not amount. Any man can learn anything he will, but no man can teach except two, those who want to learn. The short successes that can be gained in a brief time and without difficulty are not worth much. Nothing can be made except by makers. Nothing can be managed except by managers. Money cannot make anything, and money cannot manage anything. We are entering an era when we shall create resources which shall be so constantly renewed that the only loss will be not to use them. There will be such a plenteous supply of heat, light, and power that it will be a sin not to use all we want. This era is coming now. Two classes of people lose money: those who are too weak to guard what they have, those who win money by trick. They both lose in the end. When people are stung in false investment schemes, there are three causes: greed of something, for nothing, sheer inability to know, their mind, or infantile trustfulness. What right have you, save service to the world, to think that other men's labor should contribute to your gains? The remains of the old must be decently laid away, the path of the new prepared. That is the difference between revolution and progress. Most people think that faith means believing something. Oftener it means trying something, giving it a chance to prove itself. It is regrettable that people think about our monetary system and of our economic structure only in times of depression. The only prosperity the people can afford to be satisfied with is the kind that lasts. The gifted man bears his gifts into the world, not for his own benefit, but for the people among whom he is placed. For the gifts are not his, he himself is a gift to the community. People are never so likely to be wrong as when they are organized, and they never have so little freedom. Perhaps that is why the people at large keep their freedom. People can be manipulated only when they are organized. The most closely organized groups and movements in the world are those which have been the least friendly to the people's progress and liberty. With all the wealth of the world at hand, there are human beings who hunger, whole nations who suffer cold. The judgment for this condition, for misusing nature's gifts, is the judgment upon man's failure, man's unsteadiness. Leadership is the thing. Profits made out of the distress of the people are always much smaller than profits made out of the most lavish service of the people at the lowest prices that competent management can make possible. Our modern industrialism, change to motives of public service, will provide means to remove every injustice that gives soul for prejudice. Many people are busy trying to find better ways of doing things that should not have to be done at all. There is no progress in merely finding a better way to do a useless thing. If a young man wants to fit himself for the politics of tomorrow, let him fit himself into essential industry for the purpose of learning how best to conduct it for the whole public good. Be ready to revise any system, scrap any method, abandon any theory, if the success of the job requires it. Competition whose motive is merely to compete to drive some other fellow out never carries very far. The competitor to be feared is one who never bothers about you at all but goes on making his own business better all the time. Thinking calls for facts. Facts are found by digging, but he who has gathered this wealth is well equipped for life. Experience is the harvest of life, and every harvest is the result of a sowing. The experience which young people must crave is that of success in some service for which they are naturally fitted. There is safety in small beginnings, and there is unlimited capital in the experience gained by growing. Of all the follies the elder generation falls victim to, this is the most foolish, namely, the constant criticism of the younger element who will not be and cannot be like ourselves, because we and they are different, tribes produced of different elements in the great spirit of time. The philosophy of life indicates that our principal business on this planet is the gaining of experience. Work mixed with management becomes not only easier but more profitable. The time is past when anyone can boast about hard work without having a corresponding result to show for it. Christmas stands for the human factor which makes life tolerable. Amidst the hurry of commerce and production, all of us need the annealing effect of Christ's example to relieve the hardening we get in the daily struggle for material success. The world is held together by the mass of honest folk who do their daily tasks, tend their own spot in the world, and have faith that at last the right will come fully into its own. One needs to be successful in the conventional way to learn just how far away from success it may be. Thank you. We are not rich by what we possess, but by what we can do without. He who is cruel to animals becomes hard also in his dealings with men. We can judge the heart of a man by his treatment of animals. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end. Enlightenment is man's release from his self-incurred tutelage. Tutelage is man's inability to make use of his understanding without direction from another. Self-incurred is this tutelage when its cause lies not in lack of reason, but in lack of resolution and courage to use it without direction from another. Say Parad, have courage to use your own reason. That is the motto of enlightenment. Two things fill the mind with ever-increasing wonder and awe. The more often and the more intensely the mind of thought is drawn to them, the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me. All our knowledge begins with the senses, proceeds then to the understanding, and ends with reason. There is nothing higher than reason. Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe. The more often and steadily we reflect upon them, the starry heavens above, me and the moral law within me. I do not seek or conjecture either of them as if they were veiled obscurities or extravagances beyond the horizon of my vision. I see them before me and connect them immediately with the consciousness of my existence. Whereas the beautiful is limited, the sublime is limitless, so that the mind in the presence of the sublime had tempting to imagine what it cannot as pain in the failure, but pleasure in contemplating the immensity of the attempt. For peace to reign on earth, humans must evolve into new beings who have learned to see the whole first. Seek not the favor of the multitude. It is seldom got by honest and lawful means, but seek the testimony of few, and number not voices, but weigh them. Genius is the ability to independently arrive at and understand concepts that would normally have to be taught by another person. Laziness and cowardice are the reasons why so great a portion of mankind after nature has long since discharged them from external direction naturally to Majorans, nevertheless remains under lifelong tutelage, and why it is so easy for others to set themselves up as their guardians. It is so easy not to be of age. If I have a book which understands, for me a pastor who has a conscience, for me a physician who decides my diet, and so forth, I need not trouble myself. I need not think. If I can only pay, others will easily undertake the irksome work for me. That the step to competence is held to be very dangerous by the far greater portion of mankind. Space and time are the framework within which the mind is constrained to construct its experience of reality. Have patience a while. Slanders are not long-lived. Truth is the child of time. Ere long she shall appear to vindicate thee. But to unite in a permanent religious institution which is not to be subject to doubt before the public even in the lifetime of one man, and thereby to make a period of time fruitless in the progress of mankind toward improvement, thus working to the disadvantage of posterity. That is absolutely forbidden. For himself, and only for a short time, a man may postpone enlightenment in what he ought to know, but to renounce it for posterity is to injure and trample on the rights of mankind. Skepticism is thus a resting place for human reason, where it can reflect upon its dogmatic wanderings and make survey of the region in which it finds itself, so that for the future it may be able to choose its path with more certainty. But it is no dwelling place for permanent settlement. Such can be obtained only through perfect certainty in our knowledge, alike of the objects themselves and of the limits within which all our knowledge of objects is enclosed. Have the courage to use your own reason. That is the motto of enlightenment. Foundations of the Metaphysics of Morals, 1785. how then is perfection to be sought? Wherein lies our hope? In education, and in nothing else. Act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. The light dove in free flight cutting through the air, the resistance of which it feels could get the idea that it could do even better in airless space. Likewise, Plato abandoned the world of the senses because it posed so many hindrances for the understanding. There is something splendid about innocence, but what is bad about it, in turn, is that it cannot protect itself very well and is easily seduced. An age cannot bind itself and ordain to put the succeeding one into such a condition that it cannot extend its, at best very occasional knowledge, purify itself of errors, and progress in general enlightenment. That would be a crime against human nature, the proper destination of which lies precisely in this progress, and the descendants would be fully justified in rejecting those decrees as having been made in an unwarranted and malicious manner. The touchstone of everything that can be concluded as a law for a people lies in the question whether the people could have imposed such a law on itself. Thank you. Those who make the worst use of their time are the first to complain of its brevity. Two persons cannot long be friends if they cannot forgive each other's little failings. Life is a tragedy for those who feel, and a comedy for those who think. The pleasure of criticizing takes away from us the pleasure of being moved by some very fine things. There are only three events in a man's life: birth, life, and death. He is not conscious of being born. He dies in pain and he forgets to live. We keep a special place in our hearts for people who refuse to be impressed by us. Most men make use of the first part of their life to render the last part miserable. When a book raises your spirit and inspires you with noble and manly thoughts, seek for no other test of its excellence. It is good and made by a good workman. Those who make the worst use of their time are the first to complain of its shortness. The same principle leads us to neglect a man of merit that induces us to admire a fool. A wise man is cured of ambition by ambition itself. His aim is so exalted that riches, office, fortune, and favor cannot satisfy him. The true spirit of conversation consists more in bringing out the cleverness of others than in showing a great deal of it yourself. He who goes away pleased with himself and his own wit is also greatly pleased with you. The very essence of politeness is to take care that by our words and actions we make other people pleased with us as well as with themselves. We can recognize the dawn and the decline of love by the uneasiness we feel when alone together. One seeks to make the loved one entirely happy, or, if that cannot be entirely, wretched. The pleasure of criticism takes away from us the pleasure of being deeply moved by very fine things. That man is good who does good to others. If he suffers on account of the good he does, he is very good. If he suffers at the hands of those to whom he has done good, then his goodness is so great that it could be enhanced only by greater sufferings. And if he should die at their hands, if it is true that one is poor on account of all the things one wants, the ambitious and the avaricious languish in extreme poverty. Not to be able to bear with all bad-tempered people with whom the world is crowded shows that a man has not a good temper himself. Grief at the absence of a loved one is happiness compared to life with a person one hates. A man is rich whose income is larger than his expenses, and he is poor if his expenses are greater than his income. La gloria o mérito de ciertos hombres consiste en escribir bien. El de otros consiste en no escribir. There is no road too long to the man who advances deliberately and without undue haste. There are no honors too distant to the man who prepares himself for them with patience. Il faut chercher seulement penser et parler justi sans vouloir mener les autres notre got at nos sentiments. C'est une trop grande entreprise. Everything has been said, and we are more than 7,000 years of human thought too late. Il n'y manque cependant l'oisivit du sage qu'un miller, nam et cum diter parler lyra, et très tranquil sepult travailer. No vice exists which does not pretend to be more or less like some virtue, and which does not take advantage of this assumed resemblance. That we seldom repent of talking too little, and very often of talking too much, is a maxim that everybody knows and nobody practices. Ani frauder ani incivilit qui vint de cho qui sunt audaces, de nous les fait hard mais un salut ou un sourire nous les reconcilie. A person's worth in this world is estimated according to the value they put on themselves. The great charm of conversation consists less in the display of one's own wit and intelligence than in the power to draw forth the resources of others. He who leaves you after a long conversation pleased with himself and the part he has taken in the discourse will be your warmest admirer. Men do not care to admire you. They wish you to be pleased with them. They do not seek for instruction or even amusement from your discourse. But they do wish you to be made acquainted with their talents and powers of conversation and the true man of genius will delicately make all who come in contact with him feel the exquisite satisfaction of knowing that they have appeared to advantage. As favor and riches forsake a man, we discover in him the foolishness they concealed and which no one perceived before. Slow on exceso es recomendable, en el mundo el exceso de gratitud. Thank you. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. In the end, it is impossible not to become what others believe you are. Without training, they lacked knowledge. Without knowledge, they lacked confidence. Without confidence, they lacked victory. It is easier to find men who will volunteer to die than to find those who are willing to endure pain with patience. Let the die be cast. Greek, nu epsilon rho rho, phi theta omega kappa beta omicron sigma. Contemporary Latin mistranslation. Acta alia est. What we wish, we readily believe, and what we ourselves think, we imagine others think also. When I was 5 years old, my mom always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, I want to bury Caesar, but not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them, the good is often entered. They're their bones if it were so, then let it be with Caesar. It is more important to have greatly extended the frontiers of the Roman spirit than the frontiers of the Roman Empire. Speaking of Cicero, libenter homines id quod volet credent. Roughly, it's easy for men to believe what they want to. The Romans formed a line of mantlets and struck a day siege terrace when they began to erect a siege tower at some distance. The defenders on the wall at first made abusive remarks and ridiculed the idea of setting up such a huge apparatus so far away. Did those pygmy Romans, they asked, with their feeble hands and muscles, imagine that they could mount such a heavy tower on top of a wall? All the Gauls are inclined to be contemptuous of our short stature, contrasting it with their own great height, 31. But when they saw the tower in motion and approaching the fortress walls, the strange, unfamiliar spectacle frightened them into sending envoys to ask Caesar for peace. The envoys said they were forced to the conclusion that the Romans had divine aid in their warlike operations, since they could move up apparatus of such height at such a speed. Why don la capacidad no cupa el primer lugar no hay verdadera aristocracia de metwai espiritu. He therefore built a bridge over the Seine and led his army across, alarmed by his unexpected arrival, and seeing that he had effected in one day the crossing which they had the greatest difficulty in accomplishing in 20 days, the ground in front of his camp was ideal for deploying the army. For action, the low hill on which the camp stood was of just the right width on the side facing the enemy for the legions to occupy. In battle formation on each flank, it descended steeply to the plain, while in front it formed a slight ridge and then sloped gently down. On either side of the hill Caesar had a trench dug running for about 650 yards at right angles to the line along which the troops would be drawn up, and placed redoubts and artillery at both ends of each trench to prevent the enemy from using their numerical superiority to envelop his men from the flanks while they were fighting. He left the newly enrolled legions in camp to be used as reinforcements wherever they were needed, and drew up the other 6 in front in line of battle. The enemy also had marched out and deployed for action. Being informed that it was not garrisoned, he tried to storm it. Directly he arrived, but the width of the moat and the height of the wall enabled the few defenders to repel his assault. After constructing a camp, therefore, he formed a line of mantlets and set about the usual preparations for a siege. But the next night, before his preparations were completed, the whole fugitive army of the Suessians came crowding into the place. When they saw the mantlets rushed up to the wall, earth shoveled into the moat, and siege towers erected, they were alarmed by the impressive size of this apparatus, which had never before been seen or heard of in Gaul, and by the speed with which the Romans worked. The Gauls' own ships were built and rigged in a different manner from ours. They were made with much flatter bottoms to help them to ride shallow water caused by shoals or at tides. Exceptionally high bows and sterns fitted them for use in heavy seas, and violent gales in the hulls were made entirely of oak to enable them to stand any amount of shocks and rough usage. The cross timbers, which consisted of beams a foot wide, were fastened with iron bolts as thick as a man's thumb. The anchors were secured with iron chains instead of ropes. They used sails made of raw hides or thin leather, either because they had no flax and were ignorant of its use, or more probably because they thought that ordinary sails would not stand the violent storms and squalls of the Atlantic and were not suitable for such heavy vessels. In meeting them, the only advantage our ships possessed was that they were faster and could be propelled by oars. In other respects, the enemies were much better adapted for sailing such treacherous and stormy waters. We could not injure them by ramming, because they were so solidly built, and their height made it difficult to reach them with missiles or board them with grappling irons. Moreover, when it began to blow hard and they were running before the wind, they weathered the storm more easily. They could bring into shallow water with greater safety. and when left aground by the tide, had nothing to fear from reefs or pointed rocks, whereas to our ships all these risks were formidable. Thank you. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. In the end, it is impossible not to become what others believe you are. Without training, they lacked knowledge. Without knowledge, they lacked confidence. Without confidence, they lacked victory. It is easier to find men who will volunteer to die than to find those who are willing to endure pain with patience. Let the die be cast. Greek, nu epsilon rho rho, phi theta omega kappa beta omicron sigma. Contemporary Latin mistranslation, iacta alia est. What we wish, we readily believe, and what we ourselves think, we imagine others think also. When I was 5 years old, my mom always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, I want to bury Caesar, but not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them, the good is often entered. They're their bones if it were so, then let it be with Caesar. It is more important to have greatly extended the frontiers of the Roman spirit than the frontiers of the Roman Empire. Speaking of Cicero, libenter homines id quod volet credent. Roughly, it's easy for men to believe what they want to. The Romans formed a line of mantlets and struck a day siege terrace when they began to erect a siege tower at some distance. The defenders on the wall at first made abusive remarks and ridiculed the idea of setting up such a huge apparatus so far away. Did those pygmy Romans, they asked, with their feeble hands and muscles, imagine that they could mount such a heavy tower on top of a wall? All the Gauls are inclined to be contemptuous of our short stature, contrasting it with their own great height, 31. But when they saw the tower in motion and approaching the fortress walls, the strange, unfamiliar spectacle frightened them into sending envoys to ask Caesar for peace. The envoys said they were forced to the conclusion that the Romans had divine aid in their warlike operations, since they could move up apparatus of such height at such a speed. Why don la capacidad no cupa el primer lugar no hay verdadera aristocracia de metvi aspiritu. He therefore built a bridge over the Seine and led his army across, alarmed by his unexpected arrival, and seeing that he had effected in one day the crossing which they had the greatest difficulty in accomplishing in 20 days. The ground in front of his camp was ideal for deploying the army for action. The low hill on which the camp stood was of just the right width on the side facing the enemy for the legions to occupy. In battle formation on each flank, it descended steeply to the plain, while in front it formed a slight ridge and then sloped gently down. On either side of the hill Caesar had a trench dug running for about 650 yards at right angles to the line along which the troops would be drawn up, and placed redoubts and artillery at both ends of each trench to prevent the enemy from using their numerical superiority to envelop his men from the flanks while they were fighting. He left the newly enrolled legions in camp to be used as reinforcements wherever they were needed, and drew up the other 6 in front in line of battle. The enemy also had marched out and deployed for action. Being informed that it was not garrisoned, he tried to storm it. Directly he arrived, but the width of the moat and the height of the wall enabled the few defenders to repel his assault. After constructing a camp, therefore, he formed a line of mantlets and set about the usual preparations for a siege. But the next night, before his preparations were completed, the whole fugitive army of the Suevians came crowding into the place. When they saw the mantlets rushed up to the wall, earth shoveled into the moat, and siege towers erected, they were alarmed by the impressive size of this apparatus, which had never before been seen or heard of in Gaul, and by the speed with which the Romans worked. The Gauls' own ships were built and rigged in a different manner from ours. They were made with much flatter bottoms to help them to ride shallow water caused by shoals or ebb tides. Exceptionally high bows and sterns fitted them for use in heavy seas, and violent gales in the hulls were made entirely of oak to enable them to stand any amount of shocks and rough usage. The cross timbers, which consisted of beams a foot wide, were fastened with iron bolts as thick as a man's thumb. The anchors were secured with iron chains instead of ropes. They used sails made of raw hides or thin leather, either because they had no flax and were ignorant of its use, or more probably because they thought that ordinary sails would not stand the violent storms and squalls of the Atlantic, and were not suitable for such heavy vessels. In meeting them, the only advantage our ships possessed was that they were faster and could be propelled by oars. In other respects, the enemies were much better adapted for sailing such treacherous and stormy waters. We could not injure them by ramming, because they were so solidly built, and their height made it difficult to reach them with missiles or board them with grappling irons. Moreover, when it began to blow hard and they were running before the wind, they weathered the storm more easily. They could bring into shallow water with greater safety, and when left aground by the tide, had nothing to fear from reefs or pointed rocks, whereas to our ships all these risks were formidable. Thank you.
One, being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply It gives you courage. 2. Simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. Simple in actions and thoughts, you return to the source of being. 3. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. 4. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. 5. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward, in whatever way they like. 6. A good traveler has no fixed plans, and is not intent on arriving. 7. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. 8. When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you. 9. The truth is not always beautiful, nor beautiful words the truth. 10. Time is a created thing. To say, I don't have time is like saying, I don't want to. 11. Because one believes in oneself, one doesn't try to convince others. Because one is content with oneself, one doesn't need others' approval. Because one accepts oneself, the whole world accepts him or her. 12. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. 13. A man with outward courage dares to die. A man with inner courage dares to live. 14. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. 15. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. 16. Be careful what you water your dreams with. Water them with worry and fear, and you will produce weeds that choke the life from your dream. Water them with optimism and solutions, and you will cultivate success. 17. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. 18. You have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear. 19. If you understand others, you are smart. If you understand yourself, you are illuminated. If you overcome others, you are powerful. 20. If you overcome yourself, you have strength. If you know how to be satisfied, you are rich. If you can act with vigor, you have a will. If you don't lose your objectives, you 21. Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love. 22. Manifest plainness. Embrace simplicity. Reduce selfishness. Have few desires. 23. Music in the soul can be heard by the universe. 24. Leader is best when people barely know he exists. Of a good leader who talks little, when his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did this ourselves. 25. To attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day. 26. I have 3 precious things, which I hold fast and prize. The first is gentleness. The second is frugality. The third is humility, which keeps me from putting myself before others. Be gentle, and you can be bold. Be frugal, and you can be liberal. 27. To know that you do not know is the best. To think you know when you do not is a disease. Recognizing this disease as a disease is to be free of it. 28. The wise man is one who knows what he does not know. Thank you.
Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. It is amazing how complete is the delusion that beauty is goodness. I think if it is true that there are as many minds as there are heads, then there are as many kinds of love as there are hearts. He stepped down, trying not to look long at her as if she were the sun, yet he saw her like the sun, even without looking. Respect was invented to cover the empty place where love should be. We can know only that we know nothing, and that is the highest degree of human wisdom. Only people who are capable of loving strongly can also suffer great sorrow, but this same necessity of loving serves to counteract their grief and heals them. If then I were asked for the most important advice I could give, that which I considered to be the most useful to the men of our century, I should simply say, in the name of God, stop a moment, cease your work, look around you. A quiet, secluded life in the country, with the possibility of being useful to people to whom it is easy to do good, and who are not accustomed to have it done to them, then work, which one hopes may be of some use, then rest, nature, books, music. Rummaging in our souls, we often dig up something that ought to have lain there unnoticed. When you love someone, you love the person as they are, and not as you'd like them to be. Free thinkers are those who are willing to use their minds without prejudice and without fearing to understand things that clash with their own customs, privileges, or beliefs. This state of mind is not common. Wrong does not cease to be wrong because the majority share in it. I've always loved you, and when you love someone, you love the whole person just as he or she is, and not as you would like them to be. Love, the reason I dislike that word is that it means too much. For me, far more than you can understand. All the variety, all the charm, all the beauty of life is made up of light and shadow. The strongest of all warriors are these two, time and patience. A man can live and be healthy without killing animals for food. Therefore, if he eats meat, he participates in taking animal life merely for the sake of his appetite, and to act so is immoral. I always loved you, and if one loves anyone, one loves the whole person, just as they are and not as one would like them to be. Love is life, all, everything that I understand only because I love. Everything is, everything exists only because I love. Everything is united by it alone. Love is God, and to die means that I, a particle of love. There is no greatness where there is not simplicity, goodness, and truth. Muhammad has always been standing higher than the Christianity. He does not consider God as a human being and never makes himself equal to God. Muslims worship nothing except God, and Muhammad is his messenger. There is no any mystery and secret in it. All great literature is one of two stories. A man goes on a journey, or a stranger comes to town. Sometimes she did not know what she feared, what she desired, whether she feared or desired what had been or what would be, and precisely what she desired, she did not know. All the girls in the world were divided into two classes. One class included all the girls in the world except her, and they had all the usual human feelings and were very ordinary girls, while the other class, herself, alone, had no weaknesses and was superior to all humanity. It's much better to do good in a way that no one knows anything about it. The whole world is divided for me into two parts. One is she, and there is all happiness, hope, light. The other is where she is not, and there is dejection and darkness. Thiers was right when he said that one must believe in the possibility of happiness in order to be happy, and I now believe in it. Let the dead bury the dead, but while I'm alive, I must live and be happy. They've got no idea what happiness is. They don't know that without this love, there is no happiness or unhappiness for us. There is no life. It's not given to people to judge what's right or wrong. People have eternally been mistaken and will be mistaken, and in nothing more than in what they consider right and wrong. You can love a person dear to you with a human love, but an enemy can only be loved with divine love. But I'm glad you'll see me as I am. Above all, I wouldn't want people to think that I want to prove anything. I don't want to prove anything. I just want to live to cause no evil to anyone but myself. I have that right, haven't I? But the law of loving others could not be discovered by reason, because it is unreasonable. If we admit that human life can be ruled by reason, then all possibility of life is destroyed. He soon felt that the fulfillment of his desires gave him only one grain of the mountain of happiness he had expected. This fulfillment showed him the eternal error men make in imagining that their happiness depends on the realization of their desires. Thank you. Life is pretty simple. You do some stuff. Most fails. Some works. You do more of what works. If it works big, others quickly copy it. Then you do something else. The trick is the doing something else. Just as courage imperils life, fear protects it. As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a life well spent brings happy death. Man and animals are in reality vehicles and conduits of food, tombs of animals, hostels of death, coverings that consume, deriving life by the death of others. Experience does not err, only your judgments err by expecting from her what is not in her power. The divisions of perspective are three, as used in drawing of these. The first includes the diminution in size of opaque objects. The second treats of the diminution and loss of outline in such opaque objects. The third of the diminution and loss of color at long distances. I have offended God and mankind because my work didn't reach the quality it should have. I have found that in the composition of the human body as compared with the bodies of animals, the organs of sense are duller and coarser. Thus, it is composed of less ingenious instruments and of spaces less capacious for receiving the faculties of sense. There is no object so large, but that at a great distance from the eye it does not appear smaller than a smaller object near. Just as food eaten without appetite is a tedious nourishment, so does study without zeal damage the memory by not assimilating what it absorbs. It seems that it had been destined before that I should occupy myself so thoroughly with the vulture, for it comes to my mind as a very early memory. When I was still in the cradle, a vulture came down to me. Why does the eye see a thing more clearly in dreams than the imagination when awake? Marriage is like putting your hand into a bag of snakes in the hope of pulling out an eel. Medicine is the restoration of discordant elements. Sickness is the discord of the elements infused into the living body. The poet ranks far below the painter in the representation of visible things and far below the musician in that of invisible things. It had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened. Two things. The human bird shall take his first flight, filling the world with amazement, all writings, with his fame and bringing eternal glory to the nest whence he sprang. The function of muscle is to pull and not to push, except in the case of the genitals and the tongue. I love those who can smile in trouble, who can gather strength from distress, and grow brave by reflection. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink, but they whose heart is firm, and whose conscience approves their conduct. The beginnings and ends of shadow lie between the light and darkness, and may be infinitely diminished and infinitely increased. Shadow is the means by which bodies display their form. The forms of bodies could not be understood in detail but for shadow. Many are they who have a taste and love for drawing but no talent, and this will be discernible in boys who are not diligent and never finish their drawings with shading. There are three classes of people: those who see when they are shown, those who do not see. Weight, force, and casual impulse, together with resistance, are the four external powers in which all the visible actions of mortals have their being and their end. Imagine for yourself a character, a model personality whose example you determine to follow, in private as well as in public. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Do not seek to bring things to pass in accordance with your wishes, but wish for them as they are, and you will find them. One that desires to excel should endeavor in those things that are in themselves most excellent. Nothing great is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Unless we place our religion and our treasure in the same thing, religion will always be sacrificed. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. The essence of philosophy is that a man should so live that his happiness shall depend as little as possible on external things. It takes more than just a good-looking body. You've got to have the heart and soul to go with it. We are not to give credit to the many who say that none ought to be educated but the free, but rather to the philosophers who say that the well-educated alone are free. It is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting. The two powers which in my opinion constitute a wise man are those of bearing and forbearing. It is not death or pain that is to be dreaded, but the fear of pain or death. Thank you.
Real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for the freedom of their people. A fundamental concern for others in our individual and community lives would go a long way in making the world the better place we so passionately dreamt of. Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Everyone can rise above their circumstances and achieve success if they are dedicated to and passionate about what they do. I like friends who have independent minds because they tend to make you see problems from all angles. It always seems impossible until it's done. Many people in this country have paid the price before me, and many will pay the price after me. Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Money won't create success. The freedom to make it will. It is in the character of growth that we should learn from both pleasant and unpleasant experiences. It is not our diversity which divides us. It is not our ethnicity, or religion or culture that divides us. Since we have achieved our freedom, there can only be one division amongst us, between those who cherish democracy and those who do not. For to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. A critical, independent, and investigative press is the lifeblood of any democracy. The press must be free from state interference. Thank you.
Relationships are based on 4 principles: respect, understanding, acceptance, and appreciation. If your wife has slept with another man, she has already sinned and will no longer be faithful.
You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Dwell on the beauty of life, watch the stars and see yourself running with them. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. When you rise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. Accept the things to which fate binds you and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. It is the person who continues in his self-deception and ignorance who is harmed. Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil. When another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls, penetrate inside, and see what sort of people they are. You will realize that there is no need to be racked with anxiety that they should hold any particular opinion about you. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone. The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you while you live. While it is in your power, be good. Here is a rule to remember in future. When anything tempts you to feel bitter, not this is misfortune, but to bear this worthily is good fortune. Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only at what he does himself to make it just and holy. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now, take what's left and live it properly. What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness. Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone. Do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how you would crave for them if they were not yours. Perfection of character is this: to live each day as if it were your last, without frenzy, without apathy, without pretense. Look back over the past with its changing empires that rose and fell, and you can foresee the future too. Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect. Casting aside other things, hold to the precious few, and besides bear in mind that every man lives only the present, which is an indivisible point, and that all the rest of his life is either past or is uncertain. Your days are numbered. Use them to throw open the windows of your soul to the sun. If you do not, the sun will soon set, and you with it. It is in your power to withdraw yourself whenever you desire. Perfect tranquility within consists in the good ordering of the mind, the realm of your own. If any man despises me, that is his problem. My only concern is not doing or saying anything deserving of contempt. Thank you. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. Courage isn't having the strength to go on. It is going on when you don't have strength. Religion is excellent stuff for keeping common people quiet. Religion is what keeps the poor from murdering the rich. Take time to deliberate, but when the time for action comes, stop thinking and go in. Alexander, Caesar, Charlemagne, and I have founded empires, but on what did we rest the creations of our genius? Upon force. Jesus Christ founded his empire upon love, and at this hour, millions of men would die for him. This soldier, I realized, must have had friends at home and in his regiment, yet he lay there deserted by all except his dog. I looked on, unmoved, at battles which decided the future of nations. Tearless, I had given orders which brought death to thousands. Yet here I was stirred profoundly, stirred to tears, and by what by the grief of one dog. Napoleon Bonaparte, on finding a dog beside the body of his dead master, licking his face and howling on a moonlit field. After a battle, Napoleon was haunted by this scene until his own death. There are but two powers in the world, the sword and the mind. In the long run, the sword is always beaten by the mind. The world suffers a lot, not because the violence of bad people, but because of the silence of the good people. The reason most people fail instead of succeed is they trade what they want most for what they want at the moment. Death is nothing but to live. Defeated and inglorious is to die daily. Men are more easily governed through their vices than through their virtues. As for me, to love you alone, to make you happy, to do nothing which would contradict your wishes. This is my destiny and the meaning of my life. When a government is dependent upon bankers for money, they and not the leaders of the government control the situation, since the hand that gives is above the hand that takes. Money has no motherland, financiers are. Without patriotism and without decency, their sole object is gain. Circumstances, what are circumstances? I make circumstances. Throw off your worries when you throw off your clothes at night. Music is what tells us that the human race is greater than we realize. History is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon. The hand that gives is among the hand that takes. Money has no fatherland, financiers are. Without patriotism and without decency, their sole object is gain. Religion is what keeps the poor from murdering the rich. Great men are meteors, designed to burn so that earth may be lighted. To understand the man, you have to know what was happening in the world when he was 20. If we could read the past histories of all our enemies, we would disregard all hostility for them. The extent of your consciousness is limited only by your ability to love and to embrace with your love the space around you and all it contains. It's the unconquerable soul of man, and not the nature of the weapon he uses, that ensures victory. Great ambition is the passion of a great character. Those endowed with it may perform very good or bad acts. All depends on the principles which direct them. Saw the crown of France laying on the ground, so I picked it up with my sword. I am surrounded by priests who repeat incessantly that their kingdom is not of this world, and yet they lay hands on everything they can get. The battlefield is a scene of constant chaos. The winner will be the one who controls that chaos, both his own and the enemy's. All great events hang by a single thread. The clever man takes advantage of everything, neglects nothing that may give him some added opportunity. The less clever man, by neglecting one thing, sometimes misses everything. Impossible is the word found only in the fool's dictionary. Wise people create opportunities for themselves and make everything possible. Un bon croquis vaut mieux qu'une and long discours. A good sketch is better than a long speech. To write history one must be more than a man, since the author who holds the pen of this great justiciary must be free from all preoccupation of interest or vanity. One must learn to forgive and not to hold a hostile, bitter attitude of mind which offends those about us and prevents us from enjoying ourselves. One must recognize human shortcomings and adjust himself to them, rather than to be constantly finding fault with them. Thank you. Tell me how you use your spare time and how you spend your money, and I will tell you where and what you will be in 10 years from now. A goal is a dream with a deadline. The man who does more than he is paid for will soon be paid for more than he does. Don't wait. The time will never be just right. Start where you stand and work whatever tools you may have at your command, and better tools will be found as you go along. Some people dream of success, while others wake up and work hard at it. Most great people have achieved their greatest success just one step beyond their greatest failure. When your desires are strong enough, you will appear to possess superhuman powers to achieve. The starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desires bring weak results, just as a small fire makes a small amount of heat. Great achievement is usually born of great sacrifice and never the result of selfishness. Opportunity often comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Every adversity, every failure, every heartbreak carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. It is literally true that you can succeed best and quickest by helping others succeed. Success is good at any age, but the sooner you find it, the longer you will enjoy it. It takes half your life before you discover life as a do-it-yourself project. Victory is always possible for the person who refuses to stop fighting. When defeat comes, accept it as a signal that your plans are not sound. Rebuild those plans and set sail once more toward your coveted goal. A positive mind finds a way it can be done. A negative mind looks for all the ways it can't be done. Deliberately seek the company of people who influence you to Think and act on building the life you desire. You are the master of your destiny. You can influence, direct, and control your own environment. You can make your life what you want it to be. You are the master of your destiny. You can influence, direct, and control your own environment. You can make your life what you want it to be. Think twice before you speak, because your words and influence will plant the seed of either success or failure in the mind of another. Create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. When you have talked yourself into what you want, right there is the place to stop talking and begin saying it with deeds. Patience, persistence, and perspiration make an unbeatable combination for success. Procrastination is the bad habit of putting off until the day after tomorrow what should have been done yesterday. Everyone faces defeat. It may be a stepping stone or a stumbling block, depending on the mental attitude with which it is faced. If you do not see great riches in your imagination, you will never see them in your bank balance. To be a star, you must shine your own light, follow your own path, and don't worry about darkness, for that is when the stars shine brightest. The starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desire brings weak results, just as a small fire makes a small amount of heat. You are the master of your destiny. You can influence, direct, and control your own environment. You can make your life what you want it to be. When defeat comes, accept it as a signal that your plans are not sound. Rebuild those plans and set sail once more toward your coveted goal. Do not wait. The time will never be just right. Start where you stand and work whatever tools you may have at your command, and better tools will be found as you go along. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. An educated man is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated man is one who has so developed the faculties of his mind that he may acquire anything he wants or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. Every adversity, every failure, every heartbreak carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon. Anyone who will accept them. If you are influenced by opinions, when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all humanity, because I know that a negative attitude toward others can never bring me success. I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and in myself. Thank you.
One does not sell the land people walk on. 2. When you know who you are, when your mission is clear, and you burn with the inner fire of unbreakable will, no cold can touch your heart, no deluge can dampen your purpose. You know that you are alive. 3. When you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries, and you rejoice. 4. When we show our respect for other living things, they respond with respect for us. 5. What is life? It is the flash of a firefly in the night, and it is the breath of a buffalo in the wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. 6. Everything on the earth has a purpose, every disease an herb to cure it, and every person a mission. This is the Indian theory of existence. 7. I was warmed by the sun, rocked by the winds, and sheltered by the trees. As other Indian babes, I can go everywhere with a good feeling. 8. I love the land of winding waters more than all the rest of the world. A man who would not love his father's grave is worse than a wild animal. 9. The land is sacred. These words are at the core of your being. The land is our mother. The rivers our blood. Take our land away, and we die. That is, the Indian in us dies. 10. The Great Spirit is in all things. He is in the air we breathe. The Great Spirit is our Father, but the earth is our mother. She nourishes us. That which we put into the ground, she returns to us. 11. The Holy Land is everywhere. 12. Our land is everything to us. I will tell you one of the things we remember on our land. We remember that our grandfathers paid for it with their lives. 13. The ground on which we stand is sacred ground. It is the blood of our ancestors. 14. If you talk to the animals, they will talk with you, and you will know each other. If you do not talk to them, you will not know them, and what you do not know, you will fear. What one fears, one destroys. 15. The American Indian is of the soil, whether it be the region of forests, plains, pueblos, or mesas. He fits into the landscape, for the hand that fashioned the continent also fashioned the man for his surroundings. He once grew as naturally as the wild sunflowers. 16. When the earth is sick, the animals will begin to disappear. When that happens, the warriors of the rainbow will come to save them. 17. I am poor and naked, but I am the chief of the nation. We do not want riches, but we do want to train our children right. Riches would do us no good. We could not take them with us to the other world, and we do not want riches. We want peace and love. Thank you.
Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. It is much safer to be feared than loved, because love is preserved by the link of obligation which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage, but fear preserves you by a dread of punishment which never fails. People should either be caressed or crushed. If you do them minor damage, they will get their revenge. But if you cripple them, there is nothing they can do. If you need to injure someone, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their vengeance. All courses of action are risky, so prudence is not in avoiding danger, it's impossible, but calculating risk and acting decisively. Make mistakes of ambition and not mistakes of sloth. Develop the strength to do bold things, not the strength to suffer. Because there are three classes of intellects: one which comprehends by itself, another which appreciates what others comprehend, and a third which neither comprehends by itself nor by the showing of others. The first is the most excellent, the second is good, the third is useless. How we live is so different from how we ought to live that he who studies what ought to be done rather than what is done will learn the way to his downfall rather than to his preservation. He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. Men in general judge more by the sense of sight than by the sense of touch, because everyone can see but few can test by feeling. Everyone sees what you seem to be, few know what you really are, and those few do not dare take a stand against the general opinion. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. Men are so simple of mind and so much dominated by their immediate needs that a deceitful man will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived. A man who is used to acting in one way never changes. He must come to ruin when the times in changing no longer are in harmony with his ways. A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who are most excellent, so that if he does not attain to their greatness at any rate, he will get some tinge of it. Any man who tries to be good all the time is bound to come to ruin among the great number who are not good. Hence a prince who wants to keep his authority must learn how not to be good and use that knowledge, or refrain from using it as necessity requires. And here comes in the question whether it is better to be loved rather than feared, or feared rather than loved. It might perhaps be answered that we should wish to be both, but since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it must be remembered that there is nothing more difficult to plan, more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to manage than a new system, for the initiator has the enmity of all who would profit by the preservation of the old institution, and merely wisdom consists of knowing how to distinguish the nature of trouble, and in choosing the lesser evil, it must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle, than to initiate a new order of things. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones they cannot. Therefore the injury that is to be done to a man ought to be of such a kind that one does not stand in fear of revenge. He who becomes a prince through the favor of the people should always keep on good terms with them, which it is easy for him to do, since all they ask is not to be oppressed. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few really know what you are. Nature creates few men brave. Industry and training makes many. Thank you. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. There is no other way to guard yourself against flattery than by making men understand that telling you the truth will not offend you. It is much safer to be feared than loved, because love is preserved by the link of obligation which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage, but fear preserves you by a dread of punishment which never fails. People should either be caressed or crushed. If you do them minor damage, they will get their revenge. But if you cripple them, there is nothing they can do. If you need to injure someone, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their vengeance. All courses of action are risky, so prudence is not in avoiding danger, it's impossible, but calculating risk in acting decisively, make mistakes of ambition and not mistakes of sloth, develop the strength to do bold things, not the strength to suffer. Because there are three classes of intellects, one which comprehends by itself, another which appreciates what others comprehend, and a third which neither comprehends by itself nor by the showing of others. The first is the most excellent, the second is good, the third is useless. How we live is so different from how we ought to live that he who studies what ought to be done rather than what is done will learn the way to his downfall rather than to his preservation. He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. Men in general judge more by the sense of sight than by the sense of touch, because everyone can see but few can test by feeling. Everyone sees what you seem to be, few know what you really are, and those few do not dare take a stand against the general opinion. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. Men are so simple of mind and so much dominated by their immediate needs that a deceitful man will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived. A man who is used to acting in one way never changes. He must come to ruin when the times, in changing, no longer are in harmony with his ways. A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who are most excellent, so that if he does not attain to their greatness at any rate, he will get some tinge of it. Any man who tries to be good all the time is bound to come to ruin among the great number who are not good. Hence, a prince who wants to keep his authority must learn how not to be good and use that knowledge, or refrain from using it as necessity requires. And here comes in the question whether it is better to be loved rather than feared, or feared rather than loved. It might perhaps be answered that we should wish to be both, but since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it must be remembered that there is nothing more difficult to plan, more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to manage than a new system, for the initiator has the enmity of all who would profit by the preservation of the old institution, and merely wisdom consists of knowing how to distinguish the nature of trouble, and in choosing the lesser evil. It must be considered that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle, than to initiate a new order of things. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. All men have eyes, but few have the gift of penetration. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries, of more serious ones they cannot. Therefore the injury that is to be done to a man ought to be of such a kind that one does not stand in fear of revenge. He who becomes a prince through the favor of the people should always keep on good terms with them which it is easy for him to do, since all they ask is not to be oppressed. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few really know what you are. Nature creates few men brave. Industry and training makes many. Thank you. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. The scientists of today think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. My brain is only a receiver. In the universe there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. I do not think you can name many great inventions that have been made by married men. What we now want is closer contact and better understanding between individuals and communities all over the earth, and the elimination of egoism and pride, which is always prone to plunge the world into primeval barbarism and strife. Peace can only come as a natural consequence of universal enlightenment. Everyone should consider his body as a priceless gift from one whom he loves above all, a marvelous work of art of indescribable beauty and mystery beyond human conception, and so delicate that a word, a breath, a look, nay, a thought may injure it. I do not think there is any thrill that can go through the human heart like that felt by the inventor as he sees some creation of the brain unfolding to success. Such emotions make a man forget food, sleep, friends, love, everything. Our virtues and our failings are inseparable, like force and matter. When they separate, man is no more. Let the future tell the truth, and evaluate each one according to his work and accomplishments. The present is theirs, the future, for which I have really worked, is mine. All that was great in the past was ridiculed, condemned, combated, suppressed, only to emerge all the more powerfully, all the more triumphantly from the struggle. Thank you. Every heart sings a song, incomplete, until another heart whispers back. Those who wish to sing always find a song at the touch of a lover. Everyone becomes a poet. We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. Do not train a child to learn by force or harshness, but direct them to it by what amuses their minds, so that you may be better able to discover with accuracy the peculiar bent of the genius of each. According to Greek mythology, humans were originally created with 4 arms for legs and a head with 2 faces. Fearing their power, Zeus split them into 2 separate parts, condemning them to spend their lives in search of their other halves. One of the penalties of refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors. Good people do not need laws to tell them to act responsibly, while bad people will find a way around the laws. In politics, we presume that everyone who knows how to get votes knows how to administer a city or a state. When we are ill, we do not ask for the handsomest physician or the most eloquent one. There are 2 things a person should never be angry at: what they can help and what they cannot. Those who are able to see beyond the shadows and lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed by the masses. How can you prove whether at this moment we are sleeping and all our thoughts are a dream, or whether we are awake and talking to one another in the waking state? Bodily exercise, when compulsory, does no harm to the body, but knowledge which is acquired under compulsion obtains no hold on the mind. No man should bring children into the world who is unwilling to persevere to the end in their nature and education. Musical innovation is full of danger to the state, for when modes of music change, the fundamental laws of the state always change with them. Thank you. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Indeed, he who sows the seed of murder and pain cannot reap joy and love. If there be light, then there is darkness. If cold, heat. If height, depth. If solid, fluid. If hard, soft. If rough, smooth. If calm, tempest. If prosperity, adversity. If life, death. No one is free who has not obtained the empire of himself. No man is free who cannot command himself. As long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Indeed, he who sows the seeds of murder and pain cannot reap the joy of love. is only necessary to make war, with 5 things, with the maladies of the body, the ignorances of the mind, with the passions of the body, with the seditions of the city, and the discords of families. We ought so to behave to one another as to avoid making enemies of our friends, and at the same time to make friends of our enemies. Choose always the way that seems the best, however rough it may be. Custom will soon render it easy and agreeable. Friends are as companions on a journey who ought to aid each other to persevere in the road to a happier life. Practice justice in word and deed, and do not get in the habit of acting thoughtlessly about anything. Souls never die, but always on, quitting one abode past to another. All things change, nothing perishes. The soul passes hither and thither, occupying now this body, now that, as a wax is stamped with certain figures, then melted, then stamped anew with others, yet it is always the same wax, so the soul being, always the same, yet wears at different times different forms. Allow not sleep to close your eyes, before 3 times reflecting on your actions of the day, what deeds, done well, what not, what left undone. Thought is an idea in transit, which when once released, never can be lured back, nor the spoken word recalled, nor ever can the overt act be erased. Should one in boldness say, Lo, I am God, besides the one eternal, infinite, then let him from the throne he has usurped put forth his power and form another globe, such as we dwell in, saying, This is mine, nor only so, but in this new domain. Forever let him dwell, if this he can. Concern should drive us into action and not into a depression. No man is free who cannot control himself. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. No man should quit his post but at the command of his general, that is, of God himself. Some are slaves of ambition or money, but others are interested in understanding life itself. These give themselves the name philosophers, and they value the contemplation and discovery of nature beyond all other pursuits. Do not take roads traveled by the public. Meaningful silence is better than meaningless words. Be silent, or let thy words be worth more than silence. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Indeed, he who sows the seed of murder and pain cannot reap joy and love. No one is free who has not obtained the empire of himself. No man is free who cannot command himself. If there be light, then there is darkness. If cold, heat. If height, depth. If solid, fluid. If hard, soft. If rough, smooth. If calm, tempest. If prosperity, adversity. If life, death. In anger we should refrain both have from speech and action, rest satisfied with doing well, and leave others to talk of you as they please. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of low, living beings, he will never know health or peace, for as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Concern should drive us into action and not into a depression. No man is free who cannot control himself. Some are slaves of ambition or money, but others are interested in understanding life itself. These give themselves the name philosophers, and they value the contemplation and discovery of nature beyond all other pursuits. Should one in boldness say, "Lo, I am God," besides the one eternal, infinite, then let him from the throne he has usurped put forth his power and form another globe, such as we dwell in, saying, "This is mine," nor only so, but in this new domain. Forever let him dwell, if this he can. Thank you.
One day, in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful. Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Unexpressed emotions will never die, they are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. Out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength. He that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore. Religious doctrines are all illusions, they do not admit of proof, and no one can be compelled to consider them as true or to believe in them. It is impossible to escape the impression that people commonly use false standards of measurement, that they seek power, success, and wealth for themselves, and admire them in others, and that they underestimate what is of true value in life. In so doing, the idea forces itself upon him that religion is comparable to a childhood neurosis, and he is optimistic enough to suppose that mankind will surmount this neurotic phase, just as so many children grow out of their similar neuroses. In the depths of my heart, I can't help being convinced that my dear fellow men, with a few exceptions, are worthless. Whoever loves becomes humble. Those who love have, so to speak, pawned a part of their narcissism. Immorality, no less than morality, has at all times found support in religion. It sounds like a fairy tale, but not only that. This story of what man, by his science and practical inventions, has achieved on this earth, where he first appeared as a weakly member of the animal kingdom. No, our science is no illusion, but an illusion it would be to suppose that what science cannot give us we can get elsewhere. Life, as we find it, is too hard for us. It brings us too many pains, disappointments, and impossible tasks. In order to bear it, we cannot dispense with palliative measures. There are perhaps 3 such measures. Powerful deflections. Words have a magical power. They can bring either the greatest happiness or deepest despair. They can transfer knowledge from teacher to student. Words enable the orator to sway his audience and dictate its decisions. Human beings are funny. They long to be with the person they love but refuse to admit openly. Some are afraid to show even the slightest sign of affection because of fear. Religion is a system of wishful illusions together with a disavowal of reality, such as we find nowhere else but in a state of blissful, hallucinatory confusion. Religion's 11th commandment is, "Thou shalt not question." Religion is an illusion, and it derives its strength from the fact that it falls in with our instinctual desires. The virtuous man contents himself with dreaming that which the wicked man does in actual life. It is that we are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love, never so helplessly unhappy as when we have lost our loved object or its love. Thank you. 1. Employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so that you shall come easily by what others have labored hard for. 2. Well, am certainly wiser than this man. It is only too likely that neither of us has any knowledge to boast of, but he thinks that he knows something which he does not know, whereas I am quite conscious of my ignorance. 3. The beginning of wisdom is a definition of terms. 4. What a lot of things there are a man can do without. 5. I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. 6. Slanderers do not hurt me, because they do not hit me. 7. I was afraid that by observing objects with my eyes and trying to comprehend them with each of my other senses, I might blind my soul altogether. 8. He who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have. 9. If a man is proud of his wealth, he should not be praised until it is known how he employs it. 10. Where there is reverence there is fear, but there is not reverence everywhere that there is fear, because fear presumably has a wider extension than reverence. 12. They are not only idle who do nothing, but they are idle also who might be better employed. 13. Our prayers should be for blessings in general, for God knows best what is good for us. 14. I only wish that ordinary people had an unlimited capacity for doing harm, then they might have an unlimited power for doing good. 15. How many are the things I can do without? 16. I was really too honest a man to be apolitician and live. 17. Ordinary people seem not to realize that those who really apply themselves in the right way to philosophy are directly and of their own accord preparing themselves for dying and death. 18. See one promontory, one mountain, one sea, one river, and see all. 19. A system of morality which is based on relative emotional values is a mere illusion, a thoroughly vulgar conception which has nothing sound in it and nothing true. 20. By all means, marry. If you get a good wife you will become happy, and if you get a bad one you will become a philosopher. 21. By all means, marry. If you get a good wife you will become happy, and if you get a bad one you will become a philosopher. 22. Nature has given us 2 ears, 2 eyes, and but 1 tongue to the end that we should hear and see more than we speak. 23. In childhood be modest, in youth temperate, in adulthood just, and in old age prudent. 24. The end of life is to be like God, and the soul following God will be like Him. 25. We are in fact convinced that If we are ever to have pure knowledge of anything, we must get rid of the body and contemplate things by themselves, with the soul by itself. 26. Let him that would move the world first move himself. 27. The comic and the tragic lie inseparably close, like light and shadow. 28. I am not an Athenian, nor a Greek, but a citizen of the world. 29. Call no man unhappy until he is married. Happiness is unrepentant pleasure. 30. Wars and revolutions and battles are due simply and solely to the body and its desires. All wars are undertaken for the acquisition of wealth. 31. No man undertakes a trade he has not learned, even the meanest, yet everyone thinks himself sufficiently qualified for the hardest of all trades, that of government. 32. The only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance. 33. The nearest way to glory is to strive to be what you wish, to be thought to be. Be ye slow to fall into friendship, but when thou art in, continue firm and constant. 34. Worthless people love only to eat and drink, people of worth eat and drink only to live. 35. Once made equal to man, woman becomes his superior. 36. Fame is the perfume of heroic deeds. Thank you.
The forest and water problems are perhaps the most vital internal problems of the United States. My time was still much occupied with looking after the health of my brigade, but the fact that we were going home where I knew that their health would improve lightened my mind, and I was able thoroughly to enjoy the beauty of the country and even of the storms. Learn to draw quick and shoot straight, the former being even more important than the latter. Some of these men are brave only because of their confidence in their own skill and strength. Once convince them that they are overmatched, and they turn into abject cowards. From its very nature, the life of the hunter is in most places evanescent, and when it has vanished, there can be no real substitute in old settled countries. No one but he who is partaken thereof can understand the keen delight of hunting in lonely lands. For him is the joy of the horse well ridden, and the rifle well held for him, the long days of toil and hardship resolutely endured. Ahead of us the sun was sinking behind a mass of blood-red clouds, and on either hand the flushed skies were changing their tint to 100 hues of opal and amethyst. Our tireless little horses sprang under us, thrilling with life. The very pathetic myth of beneficent nature could not deceive even the least wise being if he once saw for himself the iron cruelty of life in the tropics. Of course, nature, in common parlance, a wholly inaccurate term. By the way, there is certainly the most extraordinary diversity in the traits by which nature achieves the perpetuation of species. Every first-rate museum must still employ competent collectors, but I think that a museum could now confer most lasting benefit and could do work of most permanent good by sending out into the immense wildernesses where wild nature is at her best The conquest of wild nature demands the utmost vigor, hardihood, and daring, and takes from the conquerors a heavy toll of life and health. One of the innumerable mysteries of nature which are at present absolutely insoluble is why some snakes should be so vicious and others absolutely placid and good-tempered. The early morning was always lovely on these rivers, and at that hour many birds and beasts were to be seen. The man who wishes to do the best scientific work in the wilderness must not try to combine incompatible types of work, nor to cover too much ground in too short a time. For all the laws that the wit of man can devise will never make a man a worthy citizen unless he has within himself the right stuff, unless he has self-reliance, energy, courage, the power of insisting on his own rights, and the sympathy that makes him regardful of the rights of others. It is better for the government to help a poor man to make a living for his family than to help a rich man make more profit for his company. Now and then I am asked as to what books a statesman should read, and my answer is poetry and novels, including short stories under the head of novels. I don't mean that he should read only novels and modern poetry if he cannot also enjoy the Hebrew prophets and the Greek dramatists. Just as democratic government cannot be condemned because of errors and even crimes committed by men democratically elected, so trade unionism must not be condemned because of errors or crimes of occasional trade union leaders. The position now taken by the government is absolutely destructive of legitimate business because they outline no rule of conduct for business of any magnitude. We of this generation do not have to face a task such as that our fathers faced, but we have our tasks, and woe to us if we fail to perform them. No man has a right to shirk his political duties under whatever plea of pleasure or business. The first duty of an American citizen, then, is that he shall work in politics. His second duty is that he shall do that work in a practical manner, and his third is that it shall be done in accord with the highest principles of honor and justice. I think we ought to be broad-minded enough to recognize the fact that a good citizen striving with fearlessness, honesty, and common sense to do his best for the nation can render service to it in many different ways and by connection with many different organizations. I do wish that more of our good citizens would go into politics and would do it in the same spirit with which their fathers went into the federal armies. There must be absolute religious liberty, for tyranny and intolerance are as abhorrent in matters intellectual and spiritual as in matters political and material. And more we must all realize that conduct is of infinitely greater importance than dogma. I have always been fond of Josh Billings's remark that it is much easier to be a harmless dove than a wise serpent. There are plenty of decent legislators and plenty of able legislators, but the blamelessness and the fighting edge are not always combined. We must hold to a rigid accountability those public servants who show unfaithfulness to the interest of the nation or inability to rise to the high level of the new demands upon our strength and our resources. Thank you. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued, it must ensue. And it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then you will live to see that in the long run, I say, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think about it. But there was no need to be ashamed of tares, for tares bore witness that a man had the greatest of courage, the courage to suffer. Love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of his personality. No one can become fully aware of the very essence of another human being unless he loves him. By his love, he is enabled to see the essential traits and features in the beloved person, and even more, he sees that which is potential in him, which is not yet actualized, but yet ought to be actualized. Furthermore, by his love, the loving person enables the beloved person to actualize these potentialities by making him aware of what he can be and of what he should become. He makes these potentialities come true. Ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life he can only respond by being responsible. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. So live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you are about to act now. No man should judge unless he asks himself in absolute honesty whether in a similar situation he might not have done the same. For the first time in my life I saw the truth as it is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers, the truth that love is the ultimate and highest goal to which man can aspire. Then I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love and in love. It did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. We needed to stop asking about the meaning of life and instead to think of ourselves as those who were being questioned by life daily and hourly. Our answer must consist not in talk and meditation, but in right action and in right conduct. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets for each individual. The one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. The pessimist resembles a man who observes with fear and sadness that his wall calendar, from which he daily tears a sheet, grows thinner with each passing day. On the other hand, the person who attacks the problems of life actively is like a man who removes each successive leaf from his calendar and files it neatly and carefully away with its predecessors. After first having jotted down a few diary notes on the back, he can reflect with pride and joy on all the richness set down in these notes, on all the life he has already lived to the fullest. What will it matter to him if he notices that he is growing old? Has he any reason to envy the young people whom he sees, or wax nostalgic over his own lost youth? What reasons has he to envy a young person for the possibilities that a young person has, the future which is in store for him? No, thank you, he will think. Instead of possibilities, I have realities in my past, not only the reality of work done and of love loved, but of sufferings bravely suffered. These sufferings are even the things of which I am most proud, although these are things which cannot inspire envy. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Our greatest freedom is the freedom to choose our attitude. Thank you. Let us read and let us dance. These two amusements will never do any harm to the world. It is forbidden to kill, therefore all murderers are punished, unless they kill in large numbers and to the sound of trumpets. I have wanted to kill myself 100 times, but somehow I am still in love with life. This ridiculous weakness is perhaps one of our more stupid melancholy propensities, for is there anything more stupid than to be eager to go on carrying a burden which one would gladly throw away? I have never made but one prayer, to God a very short one. O Lord, make my enemies ridiculous, and God granted it. Fools have a habit of believing that everything written by a famous author is admirable. For my part, one read only to please myself and like only what suits my taste. Now, my good man, this is no time to be making enemies. Voltaire on his deathbed in response to a priest asking him that he renounce Satan, despite the enormous quantity of books how few people read, and if one reads profitably, one would realize how much stupid stuff the vulgar herd is content to swallow every day. It is dangerous to be right in matters on which the established authorities are wrong. Appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. Every man is a creature of the age in which he lives, and few are able to raise themselves above the ideas of the time. Our wretched species so made that those who walk on the well-trodden path always throw stones at those who are showing a new road. The human brain is a complex organ with the wonderful power of enabling man to find reasons for continuing to believe whatever it is that he wants to believe. Optimism, said Cacambo. What is that? Alas, replied Candide, it is the obstinacy of maintaining that everything is best when it is worst. Don't think money does everything, or you are going to end up doing everything for money. Men will always be mad, and those who think they can cure them are the maddest of all. But for what purpose was the earth formed? Asked Candide. To drive us mad, replied Martin. Sensual pleasure passes and vanishes, but the friendship between us, the mutual confidence, the delight of the heart, the enchantment of the soul, these things do not perish and can never be destroyed. It is clear that the individual who persecutes a man, his brother, because he is not of the same opinion, is a monster. I should like to know which is worse, to be ravished 100 times by pirates and have a buttock cut off, and run the gauntlet of the Bulgarians, and be flogged and hanged in an auto da fe, and be dissected, and have to row in a galley. In short, animals have these advantages over man: they never hear the clock strike, they die without any idea of death, they have no theologians to instruct them. Their last moments are not disturbed by unwelcome and pleasant ceremonies. The only way to comprehend what mathematicians mean by infinity is to contemplate the extent of human stupidity. Do you believe, said Candide, that men have always massacred each other as they do today, that they have always been liars, cheats, traitors, ingrates, brigands, idiots, thieves, scoundrels, gluttons, drunkards, misers, envious, ambitious, bloody-minded, calumniators, debauchees? One day everything will be well. That is our hope. Everything's fine today, That is our illusion. She blushed, and so did he. She greeted him in a faltering voice, and he spoke to her without knowing what he was saying. It is an infantile superstition of the human spirit that virginity would be thought a virtue and not, the barrier that separates ignorance from knowledge. I would rather obey a fine lion, much stronger than myself, than 200 rats of my own species. Meditation is the dissolution of thoughts in eternal awareness, or pure consciousness without objectification, knowing without thinking, merging finitude and infinity. What can you say to a man who tells you he prefers obeying God rather than men, and that as a result he's certain he'll go to heaven if he cuts your throat? Madness is to think of too many things in succession, too fast, or of one thing too exclusively. If you have two religions in your land, the two will cut each other's throats, but if you have 30 religions, they will dwell in peace. In every province, the chief occupations, in order of importance, are lovemaking, malicious gossip, and talking nonsense. Each player must accept the cards life deals him or her, but once they are in hand, he or she alone must decide how to play the cards in order to win the game. Doctors put drugs of which they know little into bodies of which they know less, for diseases of which they know nothing at all. The discovery of what is true and the practice of that which is good are the two most important aims of philosophy. Thank you.
One, all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue. 2, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. 3, when you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do. 4, laughter is timeless. Imagination has no age. Dreams are forever. 5, togetherness, for me, means teamwork. 6, by nature I'm an experimenter. To this day, I don't believe in sequels. I can't follow popular cycles. I have to move on to new things. So with the success of Mickey, I was determined to diversify. 7, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. 8, a man should never neglect his family for business. 9, if you can dream it, you can do it. 10, the more you like yourself, the less you are like anyone else, which makes you unique. 11, when you believe in a thing, believe in it all the way, implicitly and unquestionable. 12, we keep moving forward, opening new doors, and doing new things, because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. 13, laughter is America's most important export. 14, our greatest natural resource is the minds of our children. 15, first, think. Second, believe. Third, dream. And finally, dare. 16, you reach a point where you don't work for money. 17, I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse. 18, I dream, I test my dreams against my beliefs, I dare to take risks, and I execute my vision to make those dreams come true. 19, I believe in being a motivator. 20. We share, to a large extent, one another's fate. We help create those circumstances which favor or challenge us in meeting our objectives and realizing our dreams. 21. Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. 22. I love Mickey Mouse more than any woman I have ever known. 23. The difference between winning and losing is most often not quitting. 24. Everyone needs deadlines, even the beavers. They loaf around all summer, but when they are faced with the winter deadline, they work like fury. If we didn't have deadlines, we'd stagnate. 25. Whatever you do it well. 26. When people laugh at Mickey Mouse, it's because he's so human, and that is the secret of his popularity. 27. Never get bored or cynical. Yesterday is a thing of the past. 28. That's the real trouble with the world. Too many people grow up, they forget. 29. Everyone falls down. Getting back up is how you learn how to walk. 30. Adults are only kids grown up. 31. It's a mistake not to give people a chance to learn to depend on themselves while they are young. 32. We allow no geniuses around our studio. 33. I resent the limitations of my own imagination. 34. In bad times and in good, I've never lost my sense of zest for life. 35. Most of my life I have done what I wanted to do. I have had fun on the job. 36. People often ask me if I know the secret of success and if I could tell others how to make their dreams come true. My answer is, you do it by working. 37. I do not like to repeat successes. I like to go on to other things. 38. I have been up against tough competition all my life. I wouldn't know how to get along without it. 39. That's what we storytellers do. We restore order with imagination. We instill hope again and again and again. 40. Happiness is a state of mind. It's just according to the way you look at things. 41. The greatest moments in life are not concerned with selfish achievements, but rather with the things we do for the people we love and esteem, and whose respect we need. 42. Get a good idea and stay with it, dog it, and work at it until it's done, and done right. 43. To the youngsters of today, I say, believe in the future. The world is getting better. There still is plenty of opportunity. Thank you. Rule number 1. Never lose money. Rule number 2. Never forget rule no. 1. Investing is laying out money now to get more money back in the future. Or invest in a business you cannot understand. I don't look to jump over 7-foot bars. I look around for 1-foot bars that I can step over. At heavy weight on certainty. It's not risky to buy securities at a fraction of what they're worth. If a business does well, the stock eventually follows. It's far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. Time is the friend of the wonderful company, the enemy of the mediocre. For some reason, people take their cues from price action rather than from values. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. In the short run. The market is a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine. Risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. It is better to be approximately right than precisely wrong. All there is to investing is picking good stocks at good times and staying with them as long as they remain good companies. Why diversification is only required when investors do not understand what they are doing. You do things when the opportunities come along. I've had periods in my life when I've had a bundle of ideas come along, and I've had long dry spells. If I get an idea next week, I'll do something. If not, I won't do a damn thing. What we learn from history is that people don't learn from history. You are neither right nor wrong because the crowd disagrees with you. You are right because your data and reasoning are right. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. Investing is not a game where the guy with the 160 IQ beats the guy with 130 IQ. When a management with a reputation for brilliance tackles a business with the reputation for bad economics, it is the reputation of the business that remains intact. The best business returns are usually achieved by companies that are doing something quite similar today to what they were doing 5 or 10 years ago. Thank you.
The whole history of the world is summed up in the fact that when nations are strong, they are not always just, and when they wish to be just, they are no longer strong. It is no use saying, "We are doing our best." You have got to succeed in doing what is necessary. We shape our dwellings, and afterwards our dwellings shape us. It has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. It is a mistake to try to look too far ahead. The chain of destiny can only be grasped one link at a time. When I am abroad, I always make it a rule never to criticize or attack the government of my own country. I make up for lost time when I come home. I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Dictators ride to and fro on tigers from which they dare not dismount, and the tigers are getting hungry. Employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so that you shall come easily by what others have labored hard for. I have never accepted what many people have kindly said, namely that I have inspired the nation. It was the nation and the race dwelling all around the globe that had the lion heart. I had the luck to be called upon to give the roar. Without a measureless and perpetual uncertainty, the drama of human life would be destroyed. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. An appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping it will eat him last. Solitary trees, if they grow at all, grow strong. Say what you have to say, and the first time you come to a sentence with a grammatical ending, sit down. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duties and so bear ourselves that, if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour. Do not let us speak of darker days, let us speak rather of sterner days. These are not dark days, these are great days, the greatest days our country has ever lived. The English know how to make the best of things. Their so-called muddling through is simply skill at dealing with the inevitable. In war, as in life, it is often necessary, when some cherished scheme has failed, to take up the best alternative open, and if so, it is folly not to work for it with all your might. No one can guarantee success in war, but only deserve it. If one has to submit, it is wasteful not to do so with the best grace possible. All the great things are simple, and many can be expressed in a single word: freedom, justice, honor, duty, mercy, hope. Curse ruthless time, curse our mortality. How cruelly short is the allotted span for all we must cram into it. We must beware of needless innovations, especially when guided by logic. One ought never to turn one's back on a threatened danger and try to run away from it. If you do that, you will double the danger. But if you meet it promptly and without flinching, you will reduce the danger by half. Never run away from anything. Never. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the hard may be, for without victory there is no survival. We shall draw from the heart of suffering itself the means of inspiration and survival. The problems of victory are more agreeable than those of defeat, but they are no less difficult. My most brilliant achievement was my ability to be able to persuade my wife to marry me. I am prepared to meet my Maker. Whether my Maker is prepared for the ordeal of meeting me is another matter. The English never draw a line without blurring it. It is a good thing for an educated man to read books of quotations. There are a terrible lot of lies going about the world, and the worst of it is that half of them are true. Thank you.